I'm in a couple of WhatsApp groups with kind of the CQI grader instructor community, and um, the rollout of this was, I mean, I don't feel like I have the strong enough words to stress how poorly it was done.
If the content we bring you on the podcast has helped you with your business or your career and you're looking for a way to financially support the independent production of this podcast, you can do that for as little as a few dollars a month by backing us on Patreon or becoming a paid subscriber on our YouTube channel. Another way to support us and continue your learning is to purchase one of our on-demand workshops available on our website, mapperforward.coffee/workshops. Check the show notes for links, and as always, thanks for the support. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 1 of what I think is a very important 5-part series on the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward for the entire specialty coffee industry. My guest today is the Director of Education of the Sustainable Coffee Institute, the SCI, Tim Heinze. Tim, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Second time guest. It's been many years since you were
It's
on the podcast. You were on the podcast when we used to live stream it.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
It really has. So I know there's nothing going on in the coffee industry. We just thought we'd have a chat with you on the podcast.
That's exactly right. What more could I do on a Wednesday morning than have a cup of coffee with Lee Safar?
Well, we could only better it by having dinner in Dubai for one of our epic
That's true.
dinners.
I was about to say, I mean, it feels a little awkward not sitting down around some delicious food, having a conversation with you, because that seems to be what most of our conversations are. So,
And they're fantastic conversations. Folks, I have thought about how I would start this conversation so much over the past week since Tim and I decided that we would have this conversation. And nothing seemed to fit. And I just thought, I'm just going to say what I want to say. And what I want to say is a couple of things. There are events that happen in our industry that we all will remember forever. Some of them are related to different varietals of coffee that were introduced or processing methods. I'll never forget when I tasted a gesha for the first time and the whole industry was talking about it. I'll never forget when people started having the conversations about infused coffees. When people started talking about competitions in different ways and are they relevant or aren't they relevant? What we're going to talk about today is another one of those events. We're going to be talking about the changes to the queue. And recently at SCA Expo in Houston, which was 2 weeks ago, we're recording this for reference on the 7th of May. If you are a patron, you will have access to this before the 10th, and it won't be coming out for like 2 weeks after that. But if you aren't a patron, you can always get early access to all of our series on our Patreon for like $3 a month. So go ahead and sign up to that, and it's a great way to support us. But there was an event that happened at Expo that sent shockwaves through the industry. Would you agree, Tim? You were there. You were at
yes.
Expo.
Yeah, that's a very fair statement.
I was not at Expo, and the shockwaves reached all the way to Dubai, let me tell you. Now, for those who follow us on social media, you may have seen a post that I made that I had been holding off making for quite some time. For those who didn't see it, I am going to tell you some context that I think is needed for this conversation. In 2024, we had a series at World of Coffee Dubai where we live streamed from World of Coffee Dubai. And the whole series that was live streamed, we asked every guest the same question. How do people prepare for the volatility of 2024? And I have been pretty clear to say that I don't have, I have respect for Yanis. And I don't run away from that statement. Yanis is a man who's a straight shooter and he has conviction for the things that he says. I have respect for anyone who can say anything with their chest. In my opinion, this was what I'm about to tell you was something that tarnished him in my eyes. And that is when I said to Yanis, the conversation is going to be about the volatility of 2024. He said to me, what volatility? And to me, that was a question mark. I thought he was joking. And I said to him, no, seriously, like the volatility of 2024. And he then proceeded to have a conversation with me about the automation, because that was in the coffee press where at that time where the SCA had approved like some automatic machine for the competitions and the CVA. And he did not address the volatility of 2024. And then another board member came on the podcast at that same time and did the same thing. It was all about the CVA. And I started to think at the time, wait, what's going on here? Why is both of these people talking about the CVA so intensely? We soon after that started using the word coffee crisis on the podcast. And I had happened to be speaking to somebody and said, listen, why isn't the SCA talking about the coffee crisis? Is it that they don't think that there's a coffee crisis? And allegedly at a board meeting, and I'm prefacing everything with allegedly here, there was a question that was asked to the board about how the board would talk about the coffee crisis. And the direction was given that nobody, allegedly, is to talk about the coffee crisis because it will accelerate the crisis. And it will also detract from the CVA agenda. Now, that was what was allegedly said. My response to that person was, if that's the case, the people who said that have blood on their hands from the businesses that go out of business when the SCA has not signalled to our whole community that they need to prepare for hard times ahead. And I stand by that. I would go to court to defend that position. We are the coffee industry. We do not operate like the broccoli industry or I always take a dig at broccoli, but we are different and people gravitate towards us because we profess to look after each other. We profess to be a community. We do not fuck each other over. And this feels like a stain. In my mind, this feels like a stain where we should have been sent a signal by the people that we look up to that we assume are taking care of us and have our best interests at heart, that they were going to tell us that hard times were ahead. It would be different if they didn't know. But from everything that I understand, they did know, allegedly. And so, Tim, when what happens at SCA happens, the context of what I just said is even more important, right?
Yeah.
Because there was a kind of cognitive dissonance that resonated throughout our entire industry. And for those who don't know, cognitive dissonance is when you have thoughts that conflict. Your own thoughts are conflicting with each other. How is it that the SCA could be, or the CQI, whichever it was that you were affiliated with, they would be this thing that I respected, but at the same time, they could spring this on us without including us? Where's the trust? So, in this episode, we're going to talk about what was the joint announcement that was made by the SCA and the CQI at Expo, and what has been the reaction in the community. So that's how we've set the stage for the conversation. Tim, give people some context about why you're here, and then we'll talk about and we'll lead into answering the question that we were asking.
Yeah, I mean, thanks. I mean, I really appreciate you having me, and I'm excited to have these conversations together. And I really appreciate the opportunity. The context for me of being here is, ultimately my passion is investing in individuals, professionals across our supply chain, from producers to cafe owners to baristas to roasters and all between. Over the course of the last 15 plus years of being in the coffee industry, I've grown a deep passion in what you said in terms of the industry being a community is something that I've experienced and seen over and over and over again. And I believe that there, I love teaching and training and educating and learning. I mean, really, honestly, like the reason why I love teaching so much is because I love learning, and which is odd, right? Like, I mean, the combination of that. And for me, when I started in coffee, I knew nothing. And I sat around tea tables with coffee producers in Southern China talking about coffee. And for me, it was the opportunity to learn that drove me to want to teach and to help others in that professional development journey. And so I actually, in that same vein, I was sitting in Jakarta with my good friend Johan. He was doing his final review to be an instructor for CQI for the quality evaluation program, and I'm sitting in the back of the class watching him teach, which was awesome, and was doing such a great job in capturing the values of what we want in terms of educators. And I start receiving these messages about an announcement that's coming, have you seen the LinkedIn video? Have you seen the video? And all of a sudden, we're now seeing this information in real time that there's going to be this big announcement coming about the partnership between SCA and CQI. And so I I'm in Indonesia, so I'm not like in the same time zone that I typically live in, and people that I, would send messages to in stateside or whatever. So I reaching out to a couple of different friends and realizing that what was communicated to me at that time was that CQI had sold the Q to SCA. That's what it was communicated to me as. And this was before Expo and for all the announcements and the town halls and all that kind of stuff. And I think for me, it was a critical moment where me personally, I don't run a lab. I don't run a coffee school. I previously worked for Sukafina for, up until the end of last year as the director or the coffee education manager. We created an education department. My passions again lie in teaching and educating and building training programs. And thankfully, I mean, my heart really goes out to people who built entire businesses off of promoting CQI educational programs and quality evaluation programs. I was not in a position where my sole income was tied to that. A good portion was, I mean, around 20% of what I do in terms of consulting and other things are teaching and training some of those quality evaluation programs. But at that moment where that kind of began to be realized for me was a pivotal moment of saying, I want to do something for this industry. I want to invest in people, and where I've been involved teaching programs for CQI for the last 7, 8 years. I did do the SCAA prior to the merge. I did the courses through SCAA. And for me, it was a pivotal moment where I wanted to do something for our industry. I wanted to invest in our industry. And provide the structure and the educational programs that are skills based, that are competency based, that are based on the needs of where our industry is, and where it is going. And so, yeah, the context, to answer your question, the context of all of that was um, I had tried, I mean, and I've shared with you, I
Yeah.
tried
At length.
to, you know, I've had conversations directly with the leadership of CQI specifically, and I know I probably am not the easiest person to get along with. I acknowledge that. I can be opinionated. I can be strong-willed. I can maybe push back on certain things and at certain times, and I try to do it in a respectful way. But the difference is that I've put myself in a position to say, look, I see these issues. I want to jump in and help fix them. And I've
Mm.
tried to do that, whether it was applying for board positions, whether it was applying for actual positions within the company. And that wasn't received well, which is fine. I acknowledge there's other people out there that are way smarter than I am. And so no problems at all. But when I've heard that announcement and or saw that initial messages, the initial messages of what was coming, that was a pivotal moment where I decided I want to do something. I want to be
Mm-hmm.
involved with investing in making, improving our industry. And so I reached out to a buddy of mine. I was actually talking to Marty Polak, and we were messaging back and
Shout
forth
out to Marty.
because he's very invested in
Mm.
coffee education, in CQI programs, etc. And he shared with me about that they, back in 2016, he with a couple other individuals had launched the Sustainable Coffee Institute, and
Mm.
that it really hadn't done a whole lot. There's some great things that it had done. There's some roasting programs that it taught. It taught some processing classes. There were some barista classes. It had done some training, but kind of suffered under the competition against CQI
Mm.
and SCA in the market. And so, didn't really take off as much as they had hoped and desired. And I told him, I said, I'm going to do something. I'm going to do something. I've built educational programs for Sukafina. I've built educational programs for some of the leading development agencies across the world. I'm going to do something. And at that point, he was like, well, let's do something together. Let's take a look and let's kind of relaunch SCI, Sustainable Coffee Institute, and let's fill that void that this has created, and the need that this has left in our industry. So that was kind of all. I mean, that was I'm sitting in Jakarta, I mean,
This is
I'm like,
pre-Expo.
this is pre-Expo. So I'm like jet lagged so bad. And I'm, staying up late at night, waking up early in the morning, thinking, dreaming, all of this stuff. And that's when I signed on, and I acknowledge that there's challenges. There are going to be and will continue to be challenges as we walk forward, as there always is. Somebody sent me a message about things, being challenging, and I said, well, most of the times things that are worth it are challenging, because
Mm-hmm.
if they weren't, more people would have done it already. And I think there's, some real strength in that. And so that was all pre-Expo, and there was a lot of rumors. There was a lot of, well, maybe it's this, and maybe they're doing that. And then it was Wednesday, when people started kind of, like, exhibitors started moving in and people started setting up, and there was all these pictures of, coffee is more than a score, and the evolved queue, which has to be like my least favorite phrase in this whole, it's just
So fucking disrespectful.
so it's just, and there were a ton of emotions. And interestingly, during this expo, I was actually hired by, I got to hang out with the people at the Peru booth the whole weekend, which was
Mm-hmm.
awesome. Such a great group of people. The organization that was responsible for putting together the Peru booth at Expo
Mm-hmm.
has an office here in Houston, Texas, where I'm based. And they asked me to come run their cuppings. So I got to just run cuppings all weekend, which was so much fun.
Dream job.
And I just like, people walked in, we cupped coffees together. We talked about, all the producer groups that had coffees on the table were there, and it was awesome. And in fact, in hindsight, I think it was really great because I was there the whole weekend. People were coming by and having conversations with me about what was going on, but I couldn't attend a lot of the town halls and other things because I was there at the booth. But I was able to ask people and like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? And what do you think? I mean, I'm sitting around talking to a bunch of producers in Peru about, what do they think about this whole change and so it was a great opportunity again to learn, to really hear from people, and it reaffirmed really I think the directions and the passions of where we're desiring to take Sustainable Coffee Institute and the programs that we're looking to focus on. So so kind of the response was a wide range. I mean, I'm in a couple of WhatsApp groups with kind of the CQI grader instructor community, and the rollout of this was, I mean, I don't feel like I have the strong enough words to stress how poorly it was done. And to their credit, CQI from leadership acknowledged such, but it's become this pattern where, previously we had things like Flavor Active and other kind of projects or programs that were rolled out extremely poorly that then had to be rolled back. I mean, it's been a little bit of a pattern with CQI, unfortunately. And, I know Michael Sheridan, the new CEO, has only been there for a short period of time. But it was extremely discouraging to see how that was rolled out. And there were a range of emotions from people. I mean, you have instructors across the world who they basically were fired from their jobs. I mean, they lost their jobs because and not basically, I mean, several of them that I've heard from have lost their jobs or businesses. And, one could say, well, why did they build a business, based on, CQI, or why did they? Well, because they believed in what CQI was doing. They believed in the educational programs and that it was something that people needed that did improve their lives and was a part of contributing to their own development. And I mean, I really, my heart goes out to those individuals. And there were a couple of town hall meetings, and there were several, I thought, key individuals that spoke beautifully and very directly to CQI about the decision that they've made and what they've done. And having heard those conversations and having had a chance to attend, webinar that CQI had where they answered some more questions, what I've come to understand. So the question about what was the announcement, what was done, the specific announcement is that CQI sold, whatever legal term they want to use, the Q program, the quality evaluation program that CQI has to SCA in the amount of $250,000 a year over the next 10 years. So $2.5 million over 10 years. CQI has two main educational programs: the quality evaluation program and the post-harvest processing program. The quality evaluation program by far is the main source of revenue that comes into the educational, as far as I understand, and from looking at, the tax filings and things like that, is the main source of revenue for CQI. And I reached out to several board members as the announcement was made. And my question was, like, why? Like, why is it? And the backstory, what's really difficult, and I want to be very, very clear in stating that this is as best as I understand and is my opinion of the situation of what's unfolded. But as instructors for the quality evaluation program, we're required to attend every 2 years instructor calibration or community of practice. They've called it different things, but essentially it's like a meeting every 2 years, renew our license, but we also have good discussions. I've always really valued learning from other instructors that are teaching in other areas of the world. And going back to, we were in Mexico City in 2023, and a lot of the initial announcement of the CBA form was made. And so as instructors, we're like, what are we doing about this? We're starting to get questions from participants in classes, and how are we going to interact with this? And what does this mean for us? And I was strongly advocating at that time that CQI needed to change their position from being based on a form and training on a form to training sensory professionals. And I realized that to me, it's not just an issue of semantics. Like I get, okay, but what form are we going to use in the class? Sure, that's a question. But if our ultimate goal is just to train to a form, then what happens when the industry innovates? And what happens when there's a new need in the industry? And at that time, the position was, well, let's wait and see. Okay. I didn't feel like that was a really responsible position. And maybe that was what they told instructors, and internally they were discussing and doing other things. Sure. Maybe that's, what happened. And then end of 2024, there was another event in Chicago, and I attended that one as well. And at that time, and even going back to November of 2024, CQI from leadership position within the quality evaluation and within the educational program stated, we are moving forward in the Q grader program with the 2004 SCA form, using the 2004 SCA form. That was the position. Their position was that the CVA was not the tool that they felt like the Q grader program needed. And Michael even said that during their town hall meetings. We know as early as 2000, at the end of 2024, November 2024, our position was that the CVA form was not, the direction that we wanted to go for our quality evaluation programs. And so the question became in my mind, well, why? Like November to April, like what changed?
What happened?
And there was a lot of suggestion and a lot of rumor. Oh, SCA threatened to sue CQI and threaten legal action. And Michael addressed this, and Giannis both addressed this in their meetings at SCA Expo, saying, no, we didn't. There was no threat of legal action. There was no this or that. Personally, in my opinion, whether there was actually paper thrown on the table or intimidation or whatever, I don't really know. I don't know. But thinking like just with like a very logical business sense, I couldn't wrap my head around why a decision was made to do this when you have a program that's bringing in a significant amount of revenue. And as I like that funds your other, the project work and the other things that CQI does, it's fantastic. And I know, and as far as I understood, and what I heard from some board members was, we did this to ensure the future of CQI, that we could still pursue our mission. And what I've come to understand is that SCA was prepared, and this is going back even a couple months, where they made announcements about, a new program where they were going to license people to evaluate coffees using the CVA form. And interestingly enough, I was, not that I do this often, but I was digging around the U.S. trademark website 2 days ago, actually. And I saw an application that SCA submitted, it's public information, for a licensed coffee evaluator program, or coffee evaluator program, and a licensed coffee evaluator, a trademark for those two with logos and things like that. So what was communicated to us was, and why the rapid decision was, that it became clear to Michael and the board with CQI that SCA was going to launch a program, a quality evaluation program that was going to be at a direct competition to the CQI Q Grader program. And they didn't feel that CQI was in a position to compete with SCA in that space, and they would lose market share, they would lose revenue for their educational programs to SCA and to that program, and therefore would threaten their the revenue that they use to fund other projects and to pursue their mission. And rather than competing with SCA, they sold that license, that Q grader program to SCA for them to direct and them to lead. And in addition to that, so they licensed that. And then in addition to that, and I don't know if SCA was already planning this or if it was a part of the deal. SCA is also committed 5% of their educational revenue to CQI, and it was specifically announced for development work. So was that part of the
Just to clarify, it's a loan. It's not a grant. It says it's a grant, but it is a loan. It's not actually giving the money to the CQI. I read it in an article that Cosimo Lobato wrote. It is a loan to the CQI, and I wanted to clarify that because they're not clarifying it anywhere.
I didn't know that.
Written,
it was definitely proposed and spoken of as we've committed 5% of our education revenue to CQI for development work.
Right. As it has been reported in an article that I will include the link to in the show notes, it is a loan. It is not as what people would have you believe, in my opinion.
Okay. So there were a lot of questions about, one, by the instructor community, and I don't know this exact numbers, but I want to say it's like 60 to 70 individuals. And the overwhelming question was, why didn't you come to us? Why didn't you come to us? Why didn't you invite us? Like, this isn't like a flavor active where, hey, we're going to introduce a new tool into the courses that we're doing. How do you feel about this? Or yes, flavor active had significant implications. This decision makes flavor active seem like quite a small thing, even though it was quite a large thing back then. Yeah. And it was like, why didn't you bring us into this? And I believe that there were individuals within CQI at a leadership level that I don't think they provided accurate and fair information to the board and to Michael on the state of, could the Q grader program compete? Would we lose share? What does the educational program at SCA entail? But at the end of the day, why didn't they include instructors in that? And I guarantee you, because I know these people, I don't know all of them, but I know a good number of them, and they are passionate about teaching people, about supporting people in this journey to improve their lives. And one thing I heard a lot of at SCA, and through a lot of these conversations, was, well, the barrier to entry to become an instructor is high. The cost to become an instructor in CQI is really high. The cost of the courses is really high and prohibitive for producers. Absolutely, 100%. And that's been an issue that we've been raising with CQI for years. But to me, those are like, I don't see the logical leap of, because the programs are really expensive, we license it to SCA so SCA can sell it cheaper to people. I just don't, I feel like that leap is not one that logically I can understand. I've been adamant to CQI in the past about finding ways that we can onboard more instructors across both the educational programs, quality evaluation and post-harvest processing, for people in producing countries. And it's the system that's been created, the framework that's been built around it. Yes, it is cost prohibitive, and that had to be changed. But I reached out, and my opinion is that because CQI has not, in my opinion, innovated and continued to adapt to where the industry is, and to adapt their educational programs and improve their educational programs, they were put in this position. This didn't happen overnight. And I don't know all of the specifics, but I know there's been ongoing conversations between SCA and CQI going back a couple of
4
years.
4 years. Anyone who wants to dispute that, anyone who tells you that this is something that happened like last minute, or they're full of shit, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the way that you can demonstrate that they're full of shit, look how much marketing material had to be printed weeks, months in
Oh, for
advance. That was
sure.
at SCA Expo. They were ready to do this.
And
So
that's what
anyone who tells you like, oops, we just, it had to be told in the last moment, go fuck yourself.
And a lot of the messaging around the announcement was, and I know me personally, and I know many other instructors took very personally that the cue, the previous cue, the Neanderthal cue was just about a score, or was just it was just about flavor. It didn't care about people. It didn't care. And nothing could be further from the truth. And not to mention the fact that the Q grader program, as it currently existed before Expo and as it exists, I guess, now up until October 1st, it incorporates an understanding of a physical assessment of green coffee. It incorporates an understanding of how we actually do an evaluation looking at physical defects in the green bean, sensorial properties, not just flavor. And we talk about the absolutely critical aspects of different values that are framed around how coffee is traded, direct relationship, all these other, is it captured in the form that we use to fill out? No, because, my argument would be, is that really the proper place to capture it? Like, as you're around a cupping table, trying to evaluate coffee and trying to understand what the quality is. So the announcement and the fallout, there's been a significant amount of distrust. There has been a feeling of just complete being sold out. Betrayal. And I believe that CQI really read the room wrong in terms of what
both of them did.
Sure. I've spoken to more board members and individuals with CQI. I think that they way overvalued and appreciated what SCA was launching and what SCA has in the CVA. I think they way underappreciated and underrepresented the role of the instructor community in supporting, in being passionate about the mission and vision of what CQI is pursuing. And in the wake are the fallout of many instructors and Q graders. I was in Indonesia. I came back to the US, and immediately there was another instructor in Indonesia who was like, I have a course that starts tomorrow. What do I do?
Right.
How do I? And the question was, how do I stand in front of these participants, these learners of this course, and be faithful to myself, my own ethical values, and to the sacrifice that they've made? And it's like, what? And it was so. Your point about, when you saw I haven't done a lot of event preparation, but I've ordered, I've made orders for printouts and poster boards and all of that stuff. It doesn't happen overnight. That doesn't happen over a week. It was very clear that this was not this
was calculated.
From what I understand,
in my opinion,
it was announced to the staff of CQI on I think on Tuesday. I think that video was launched around that time, and then it was signed and done. So, but the idea, and I believe Michael was honest in this, of saying we initiated conversations or have been having conversations since the beginning of the year, which made, really, really, so the fact that since early in 2025, whether that's January, February, March, whatever it is, that they were having conversations about this, but yet signed a contract with, introducing a new coffee library. They, people were making plans to travel for instructor meetings. That, I applied for a job at CQI that had an application deadline on March 4th. And people are making decisions. In the meanwhile, there are conversations going on that are not just small changes that are like wholesale changes within the entity. And I think it's the fallout, and my concern for CQI, because I still care about people and I still care about people that are involved with that and the people who
Mm-hmm.
are influenced by that. There's staff members there that I care for, love, and respect,
Mm-hmm.
that are left like, do I have a job come Monday? Like, where is my position? And many of them found out in the same way. Maybe they were announced before, and I believe there was a direct announcement to staff, but they found out, on the 10-yard line instead of the 5-yard line. Like, I mean,
Right, like barely just ahead of
so
time.
so and again, there was quite a bit of conflicting information that was communicated at SCA in a meeting that CQI hosted with board members. They had indicated that there was information they couldn't share because they were under an NDA. Giannis communicated in another meeting that there were no NDAs. So like that was conflicting information that we're
Bro,
like,
the whole thing reeks of deceit, in my opinion. It's why we're all so pissed off.
yeah,
You can't turn around and say, go ahead.
No, the lack of transparency, and that's been something that we've as instructors, and I'll say I specifically have harped on with CQI, that there has to be better transparency, and this is going back years. This isn't just this week or just the Expo.
Yeah.
Look, and
we'll wrap this episode up here, because we've already been going for 40 minutes.
Sorry.
We fail so fucking badly. No, don't be sorry. But when it comes to series like this, it's hard to keep it within 15 to 20 minutes for each episode. But in the next episode, folks, we're going to continue this conversation as we address the question, does the queue need evolving? So join us for that. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon, and stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward.